Have you ever spent hours trying to convince someone of your worth only to realize they were never actually listening? Have you ever replayed a conversation in your head so many times that it started to feel like a prison you built with your own thoughts? Have you ever waited for someone to finally understand you, to finally validate you, to finally give you the closure you needed, and they never did? And the worst part? You kept waiting anyway. You kept trying. You kept giving. Well, what if I told you that right now, in this very moment, you're missing the single most powerful thing that could change your entire life? And it's not what you think it is. It's not about trying harder. It's not about being better. It's not about finally finding the right words to make someone understand. It's something so simple, so obvious, yet so completely overlooked by almost everyone you know. Make sure to subscribe to the channel because here you'll discover powerful psychological truths that can change your life, truths that most people never even consider until it's almost too late. Think about how much of your energy goes into things you can't actually control. Think about the relationships you're trying to fix, the people you're trying to convince, the situations you're trying to perfect. You spend your days building strategies in your head. You rehearse conversations. You analyze every word someone said to you. You try to find hidden meaning in their silence. You create entire narratives about what they might be thinking or feeling. And all of that energy, every single ounce of it, is flowing towards something that exists completely outside of your control. Someone else's mind, someone else's heart, someone else's choices. Most people spend their entire lives trying to control the uncontrollable while completely ignoring the one thing that actually belongs to them, their own ability to step back and let go. If you've ever felt stuck, like nothing is working no matter how hard you try, like you're pushing against a wall that never moves, then you need to understand what I'm about to share with you. Subscribe right now because this shift in perspective could be the thing that finally sets you free. Let me paint you a picture that probably feels very familiar. You care about someone deeply. Maybe it's a partner, maybe it's a friend, maybe it's a family member, and for whatever reason, you feel like they don't see you the way you need to be seen. They're distant, they're dismissive, they're choosing other things over you, and so you do what feels natural. You try to prove your worth. You show them everything good about you. You bend yourself into shapes you're not comfortable with just to earn their attention. You take on emotional labor you shouldn't have to carry. You explain yourself over and over again, thinking that maybe this time they'll finally get it. This time they'll finally understand. This time they'll finally care the way you care. And for a while, you believe that if you just try hard enough, if you just love them hard enough, if you just make yourself small enough, or big enough, or perfect enough, then they'll finally choose you. But here's what happens inside your psychology. Every time you try to prove your worth to someone who doesn't acknowledge it, you're sending a message to your own mind. You're saying that your value depends on their opinion. You're creating a belief system where you're only worthy if someone else validates that worthiness. And that person becomes the gatekeeper of your self-respect. That person holds the key to your peace. That person gets to decide whether you feel okay about yourself or not. And the longer this goes on, the more trapped you become. Because now you're not just living your life, you're living for their approval. You're not making decisions based on what feels right to you. You're making decisions based on what might finally make them see you. Then comes the overthinking phase. You replay conversations endlessly. You remember one sentence they said 3 weeks ago and you dissect it. You find yourself lying awake at night constructing elaborate explanations for their behavior. Maybe they're stressed. Maybe they're dealing with something you don't know about. Maybe they actually do care and they're just bad at showing it. You create theories. You make excuses. You twist the narrative around and around, trying to find a version of events where they're the good person and you're just misunderstanding them. Because the alternative, that maybe they don't care about you the way you care about them, is too painful to accept. So your mind stays locked in this loop. Conversation replays, analysis, searching for hidden meaning, constructing excuses, and then repeat again and again. Your mental energy is completely consumed by something that doesn't belong to you, someone else's motivations, someone else's feelings, someone else's choices. And then there's the waiting for closure, the waiting for them to finally understand what they did to you, the waiting for an apology that never comes, the waiting for them to suddenly realize your value and come back to you, the waiting for one more conversation where everything finally makes sense and you can both move forward. You hold on to conversations from months ago, looking for clues that they might feel differently now. You interpret small gestures as signs that maybe, just maybe, things are changing. You keep the door open in your heart because closing it feels like admitting defeat. And so you wait, and you wait. And the waiting becomes its own kind of torture because it requires you to stay emotionally invested in something that isn't moving. It requires you to keep your hope alive, even though hope keeps hurting you. If you want to understand this shift and take back control of your mind, subscribe to the channel, because what I'm about to reveal will show you exactly how to break free from these patterns that have been holding you hostage. The psychological pattern underneath all of this is the same. It's a fundamental misunderstanding of what power actually is. You've been taught your whole life that power means getting what you want. Power means convincing people. Power means achieving goals. Power means making things happen. And so you've been operating under the belief that if you just try hard enough, if you just use the right strategy, if you just say the right thing, then you'll be able to control the outcome. You'll be able to make that person love you. You'll be able to make that situation work. You'll be able to force the universe to bend to your will. But that's not power. That's actually the opposite of power. That's desperation disguised as effort. That's control wrapped up in the language of love. Real power is something almost nobody thinks about. Real power is what you don't do. Real power is the reaction you don't have. Real power is the chase you don't engage in. Real power is the explanation you don't give. Real power is the emotional energy you don't spill into the void of someone else's indifference. This is what most people miss their entire lives. They're so focused on what they should be doing that they never consider what they should stop doing. Think about the person who can walk away from a conversation where they're being disrespected without needing to say one more word. Think about the person who can see someone choosing distance and simply let them have that distance without trying to bridge the gap. Think about the person who can receive silence and not interpret it as rejection. They simply accept it as an answer. That person is not cold. That person is not uncaring. That person is not emotionally broken. That person has actually figured out something that most people never do. They've figured out that their peace is more valuable than their need to be understood. Here's the thing about emotional detachment that you need to understand, and I mean really understand. Emotional detachment is not about not caring. Emotional detachment is about caring for yourself more than you care about changing someone else's mind. It's about loving yourself enough to not chase people who aren't chasing you back. It's about respecting your own energy enough to not pour it into holes that can never be filled. Emotional detachment is actually the highest form of self-respect. It's you drawing a line and saying, I care about myself enough to not hurt myself for you. It's you choosing your own peace over the illusion of connection with someone who isn't truly present with you. When you truly understand this, everything shifts. The relationship that felt so important suddenly feels lighter because you're no longer carrying the weight of it alone. The conversation that kept replaying in your head finally stops because you've decided that their interpretation of what happened doesn't get to define your narrative. The person you were waiting for finally loses their power over you because you've decided that you're not going to wait anymore. But I want to be really honest with you about something. This shift is terrifying at first. Because letting go of trying to control something feels like you're losing control. Stepping back from a situation feels like you're giving up. Not chasing someone feels like you're admitting that you're not enough. These feelings are real and they're valid. Your mind will create all kinds of stories to convince you that you need to keep trying. Your mind will tell you that if you just try a little harder, a little longer, a little differently, then finally something will shift. And that's the trap. That's where most people get stuck. They confuse effort with love. They confuse desperation with commitment. They confuse exhaustion with dedication. But what if I told you that stepping back is actually the most powerful thing you can do? What if I told you that not engaging is not losing, it's choosing? What if I told you that the most controlled, most powerful version of yourself is the version that can observe a situation without being pulled into it? The version that can see manipulation and simply not participate. The version that can face someone's disappointment or anger or indifference and not feel compelled to fix it. That's power. That's real power. Let me give you a concrete example of what this looks like in real life. Imagine someone is upset with you. Maybe they're angry, maybe they're hurt, maybe they're just being difficult. The old version of you would immediately try to fix it. You'd explain. You'd apologize even if you didn't do anything wrong. You'd try to understand their perspective. You'd bend yourself around their emotions, trying to bring them back to a place where they're not upset. You'd make it your responsibility to manage their feelings. And in doing this, you give them all the power. You're now saying, your happiness is my responsibility. Your emotional state determines my actions. Your peace depends on me. Do you see how backward that is? The new version of you, the version that understands real power, looks at the same situation completely differently. Someone is upset? Okay, that's their emotional experience. That's not an emergency that requires you to abandon your own boundaries. Someone is angry? Okay, you acknowledge it. You don't create more chaos by trying to convince them they shouldn't be angry. You simply don't take it personally. You don't make it your job to fix it. You allow them to have their feelings while you keep your own peace intact. And here's what's shocking. When you stop trying so hard to fix things, things often actually get better. Not because you finally found the magic words, but because you stepped out of the dynamics that were keeping everything stuck. Think about the last time you felt truly drained. Not physically tired, but emotionally exhausted. That kind of exhaustion that comes from caring too much about something you can't control. That comes from investing so much of yourself in someone who isn't willing to meet you halfway. That comes from trying to convince, explain, prove, and justify yourself to people who have already made up their minds about you. That exhaustion is real and it's serious. But here's what you need to understand. That exhaustion is a sign. It's your body and your mind telling you that you're giving energy to the wrong place. You're watering a plant that doesn't want to grow. You're trying to fill a cup that has a hole in the bottom, and no matter how much you pour in, it will never be enough. The people who seem to have it figured out, the people who seem calm and unbothered, the people who seem to move through life without getting caught in drama and chaos, they're not smarter than you. They're not more enlightened. They just made a different choice. They decided that their energy was valuable and they were going to protect it. They decided that they couldn't control other people and they stopped trying. They decided that not everyone deserved access to their emotional availability and they started setting boundaries. This is where the real transformation happens. When you truly accept that you cannot control what anyone else thinks, feels, or does. When you truly accept that you cannot make someone love you, understand you, or choose you. When you truly accept that some people will misinterpret your words, misunderstand your intentions, and judge you unfairly no matter what you do. When you truly accept all of that, something inside you breaks free. And what breaks free is the exhausting belief that any of this is actually your responsibility to fix. You didn't break them. You can't fix them. You can't save them. You can't convince them. And the sooner you accept that, the sooner you get your life back. The shift toward clarity happens gradually, but it's unmistakable when it comes. You're in a conversation with someone, and you notice that you're not trying so hard to be understood anymore. You're just saying what you think and letting that be what it is. You're receiving criticism, and you're not immediately defending yourself or explaining yourself. You're just listening and deciding whether it's feedback worth considering. You're facing rejection, and instead of seeing it as a reflection of your worth, you're seeing it as information about whether this person is actually a good fit for your life. These moments of clarity are powerful because they show you that you still have a choice in every moment. You can choose whether to engage or not. You can choose whether to try or not. You can choose whether to care or not. But real clarity, deep clarity, comes when you realize that choosing not to engage is not the same as not caring. You can care about someone and still not chase them. You can care about a situation and still walk away from it. You can care about being understood and still accept that not everyone will understand you. Caring and protecting your own peace are not opposites. They're actually complementary. In fact, the most loving thing you can do for anyone is to take care of your own emotional health first. Because when you're drained and exhausted and desperate, you're not actually able to love anyone well. You're just trying to extract love from them to fill the hole inside yourself. The person who finally gets this, the person who stops trying to control what they can't control and starts protecting what they can, which is their own mind, their own peace, their own energy, that person becomes untouchable. And I don't mean that in a cold way. I mean it in a free way. They're no longer at the mercy of other people's moods. They're no longer waiting for external validation to feel okay about themselves. They're no longer staying awake at night replaying conversations. They're no longer checking their phone hoping for a message that might not come. They're finally, actually free. And that freedom is worth more than any relationship that requires you to abandon yourself to maintain it. So let me ask you directly, how much of your energy is right now going toward trying to change someone's mind? How much of your mental space is occupied by conversations that have already happened? How much of your hope is tied up in waiting for someone to finally see you? How much of your peace is dependent on someone else's choices? Because whatever the answer is to those questions, that's the amount of your life that you've given away. That's the amount of your power that you've surrendered to someone or something that doesn't belong to you. The beautiful part about all of this is that it can change right now, not tomorrow, not after you talk to them one more time, not after you try one more strategy, right now, in this moment. You can decide that your peace is no longer for sale. You can decide that your energy is not currency to spend on people who don't value it. You can decide that you're going to stop explaining yourself to people who have already judged you. You can decide that waiting is over, that chasing is over, that the desperate search for validation from sources that are incapable of giving it, that's over. And when you make that decision, when you really make it and you stick with it, something remarkable happens. People can feel the shift. The people who were using you start to feel uncomfortable because you're no longer available to be used. The people who were judging you start to lose their power because you stopped caring what they think. The situations that were draining you start to feel less important because you stopped investing your emotional life in them. Some relationships will change. Some will end. Some people will get upset because you've stopped performing for them. And that's actually perfect because it means you're finally making space for the people and situations that actually deserve your energy. This is the thing that nobody thinks about because it's not taught. It's not celebrated. Our culture celebrates trying harder, pushing further, being more persistent, being more impressive, loving more selflessly. But what if the real power is in knowing when to stop? What if the real strength is in being able to walk away? What if the real victory is in choosing your own peace over the illusion of connection with someone who was never fully present with you anyway? You have so much more control over your life than you think you do. But that control doesn't come from changing other people. That control comes from changing how you relate to what you cannot change. That control comes from setting boundaries. That control comes from saying no to things that don't serve you. That control comes from valuing your own peace enough to protect it fiercely. That control comes from stepping back and observing your own patterns with compassion and clarity instead of being completely consumed by them. And here's what happens when you finally do this. You start to feel lighter. The weight that you've been carrying, the weight of trying to convince someone, the weight of waiting, the weight of hoping for something that isn't coming, that weight finally lifts. You realize you can breathe again. You realize you have thoughts that don't revolve around one person or one situation. You realize you can enjoy a day without constantly checking to see if something has changed. You realize that you can be okay even if they're not okay. You realize that you can move forward even if they don't understand why you're moving. That's clarity. That's what freedom feels like. And the beautiful irony is that sometimes when you actually let go and stop trying to control something, that's when things change. Not because you finally found the magic approach, but because you removed yourself from a dynamic that wasn't working. People can feel when you're no longer desperate. People respond differently when they realize they no longer have power over you. Sometimes the person you were chasing comes back when you stop chasing them. Sometimes the situation improves when you stop trying to force it. Not always, and that's okay, because by that point you won't actually need them to come back. You won't need the situation to improve because you've already improved your own life by taking back your energy and your peace. This is what you should do that you never think about. You should stop. Stop trying. Stop chasing. Stop explaining. Stop convincing. Stop proving. Stop waiting. Stop hoping for something that isn't coming. And in that stopping, in that beautiful act of releasing your grip on things you were never supposed to control, you'll find something you didn't even know you were looking for. You'll find yourself. You'll find your peace. You'll find your power. And that's everything. If you want clarity, self-respect, and emotional freedom in your life, subscribe to the channel right now. And more than that, share this video with someone who needs to hear this. Someone who's been trapped in the same patterns, someone who's been exhausting themselves trying to control what they can't control, someone who's been waiting for someone else to finally validate their worth. Because when they hear this, when they understand this shift, their whole life is going to change. And you get to be the person who helped them see it. Subscribe now. Your clarity is waiting.